Have you ever stood at a crossroads in complete, deafening loneliness? Have you heard the silence in your room scream louder than any storm? Are you tired of being your own soul engine, your only voice of support, the only hand on your shoulder, day in and day out, without end? But what if this feeling of abandonment is not a punishment? What if it is an invitation? Carl Jung, the great cartographer of the soul, left us a map for this very territory. He called it the path of individuation, a sacred journey to one's true self, a journey that by its very nature requires us to have the courage to walk it alone. Over the next hour, we will not just talk about loneliness, we will do something more. First, you will understand why your soul demands this period of isolation. Second, you will discover the hidden power it is trying to awaken within you. And third, you will see a clear path to turn this most difficult trial into your greatest triumph. If you are ready to stop fighting loneliness and start understanding it, our dive begins. Right now. Let's talk about this silence. Not the peaceful, fertile silence one seeks in meditation or on a walk in the woods, but the other kind. The kind that rings in your ears at 3 in the morning when all problems seem like giants and you feel desperately small. The kind that settles into a phone that stays silent precisely when you so need to share joy or sorrow. About the emptiness in your chest after you've achieved something important, turned around to meet someone's admiring gaze, and met only your own reflection. This is not just the absence of people. It is something deeper. It is the feeling that you are speaking a language no one else understands. You can be surrounded by a crowd, but your words, your most profound meanings, shatter against a wall of polite misunderstanding. You try to describe the colors that only you can see, to tell of the music that plays only in your soul. But in return, you get only empty smiles. And gradually, this strange, cold realization dawns. You are the sole inhabitant of your own planet. You are its king, its prisoner, and its only God. And forcing yourself to move forward in this airless space is a task that at times seems impossible. And here is the truth you must hear. And hear it not with your mind, but with your entire being. This is not your fault. From the cradle, we are taught that to be alone is to be unwanted, to be a loser. That strength lies in a team, in support, in the approving nods of others. But this is only half the truth, and the most dangerous half at that. Your current state is not a sign of failure. It is not a breakdown. It is a sign that you have outgrown your old life, your old skin. The roles you played, the relationships that defined you, the belief system that gave you support, all of it has become too tight for you. Your soul has simply refused to fit any longer into the small life that was built for it. And when the old skin cracks and peels away, it is always painful. It always leaves us vulnerable and exposed. But this is not death. It is a shedding. It is an agonizing but necessary act of growth. You are not at the bottom. You are on the threshold of something immeasurably greater, more authentic. You are on the threshold of meeting yourself. To see this in its true light, let's shift our perspective for a moment. Think of it this way. To build a skyscraper capable of touching the clouds, it's not enough to just start laying bricks. First, you must clear the site. You must demolish the old, dilapidated buildings that occupied this space, uproot the old foundations. To an outside observer, this process always looks like an act of pure destruction, noise, dust, chaos, and desolation. It seems that something valuable is being irretrievably lost, and in its place, only bare, wounded earth remains. Now ask yourself a question. What if the universe, your own deep psyche, has not taken support away from you? What if it is not punishing you with isolation, but is clearing a construction site for you with a deafening roar? What if this loneliness is not a gaping void, but a pure, sacred space? A space that was absolutely necessary for you to finally begin the construction of your true self, not the one built for you by others, but the one that will be built by you for eternity. This idea may seem strange, even sacrilegious, and that's natural. Because from birth, we are conditioned to see loneliness as an enemy, a pathology that must be cured immediately by filling it with noise, people, activities. We are used to fighting it, running from it, hating it, and to truly accept it as a gift, as a sacred space, we cannot simply force ourselves to believe. We must conduct thorough archaeological work. Before building the new, we must carefully examine the ruins of the old. We must, layer by layer, clear away the cultural and personal accretions, those ingrained myths and collective delusions that make us so desperately fear the silence. This is exactly what we will do in the next part. We will arm ourselves with the scalpel of analysis and dissect the very ideas that hold us captive. We will begin by demolishing the prison walls that we have mistaken for a sanctuary. So let's begin our archaeological work with the topmost, most recent layer, with the ideas that society whispers to us every day. These are not your thoughts. They are viral ideas that have settled in your mind and passed themselves off as your own, causing you to suffer. The first and most toxic delusion: if I am alone, it means I am inadequate. This idea is woven into the very fabric of our culture. The cult of extroversion, where silence is considered awkward. The endless feed of social media, displaying idealized pictures of others' happiness and company. All this creates a false equation. Being surrounded by people equals being valuable. Being alone equals being unwanted. But this is a lie. This mindset ties your self-worth to external factors, making it fragile and dependent. It devalues the great thinkers, artists, and mystics who found their truth precisely in solitude, not in the noise of the crowd. The second delusion, which paralyzes the will: to move forward, I need external motivation. We seek support, approval, a push from the outside. We wait for someone to come, inspire us, and say, "You can do it." This is, without exaggeration, the most dangerous addiction of the 21st century. Because by relying on an external source of energy, you turn yourself into a puppet. When that source disappears, and it always disappears, your strings are cut and you fall, powerless and devastated. The true, inexhaustible source of movement is not external. It awaits its discovery within. And the third, most insidious delusion: I just need to endure the loneliness, find people, and everything will be fine. This is like trying to treat a deep, infected wound by simply putting a pretty bandage on it. This approach views loneliness as a simple lack of people, as a logistical problem, but it completely ignores the message that this state carries. By hastily filling the void with the first available connections, you only drown out the voice of your soul. You avoid the very inner work that life is calling you to do. The wound remains, it is just hidden from view, and rest assured one day, it will make itself known with new, even more destructive force. All these delusions have one common, deep root. We desperately confuse the symptom with the cause. We fight the fever while ignoring the infection. To see the difference, imagine you have a compass inside you, a soul's compass. Its sensitive, magnetized needle is your life energy, your attention, your true self. From childhood, we are diligently taught how to calibrate this compass. We are told, look, here is north. It's your parents' approval. And here's another north, it's high grades in school. And this shiny north, it's social success, a prestigious job, the recognition of others. And we obediently tune our inner instrument to these external, artificial magnetic poles. And for a while it works. The needle points to a goal, we go, we get a reward. But at some point, usually in midlife, something mysterious happens. Your soul, your deep self, decides it's time to stop this game. It decides it's time to seek its own, true inner north. And at that moment, a new, incredibly powerful magnetic pole arises within you. And what happens to the compass needle? It goes haywire. It no longer points to the familiar job, to the opinions of friends, to social expectations. It begins to spin wildly, to vibrate, to dart about. And this vibration, this confusion, this loss of bearings is the pain you feel. And here is the main insight. The pain you are experiencing is not a broken compass. It is not a symptom of a disease. It is the vibration of the needle desperately searching for a new, authentic pole. And you, instead of listening in the silence to understand where it is now pointing, are panicking and trying to force it back to its old position. You are trying to fix an instrument that is not broken, but is simply recalibrating to a more important, truer signal. This soul's compass model makes sense in theory, but let's test it in practice. in the only laboratory that matters, the laboratory of your own life. And now I want to ask you to do something important, not just to listen, but to participate. In a moment, I will ask you to pause this video, not for long, just for 1 minute. When you do, I want you to close your eyes, take one deep, slow breath, and allow your mind to find one specific memory. Remember the last time you felt truly stuck, when you were facing an important decision or a difficult task, and you felt that sharp, piercing loneliness in your struggle. A moment when you desperately wanted to talk to someone, to get advice, to hear another opinion. Capture that feeling. Linger in it for a second. Now, while in that memory, ask yourself one question, and I ask you to answer it with ruthless honesty because no one but you will hear this answer. In that moment, were you seeking help or were you seeking permission? Were you looking for real, practical support, or were you looking for someone to lift the terrifying responsibility for the next step from you? Someone to tell you, yes, go there. That's right, I approve. Feel the difference. Help is when someone hands you the tools. Permission is when someone tells you that you have the right to build. Why do we crave this permission so much? Because if the needle of our inner compass points to an unknown, frightening territory, we seek an external authority to legitimize this route. We look for someone on whom we can shift the blame if we get lost. An honest answer to this question could be the crack through which light begins to break into your prison. Do it now. If you felt a pang of discomfort from this question, that's a good sign. It doesn't mean you are weak or dependent. It means we have touched on something real. We have touched on that subtle but strong mechanism that keeps you standing still, waiting for a signal from outside, while your entire being is straining to move forward. And you are not the first to go through this. You are not alone in this search for permission. In fact, this pattern, this paralysis of will in the face of the need to go one's own way, was the focus of one of the greatest and boldest minds of the 20th century, Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was not just an armchair theorist. He was a courageous explorer who himself descended into the darkest and most uncharted minds of the human psyche to map them. He dedicated his entire life to studying precisely these kinds of compass breakdowns, moments when a person loses all external bearings and is left alone with a deafening inner chaos. And his main revolutionary conclusion was this: it is not a breakdown. It is not a system failure. It is not a pathology to be treated. It is a universal, natural, and absolutely necessary stage of development for every mature individual. A stage at which the soul demands that we stop looking outward and start looking inward. The stage of transition from a personality created for others to a personality born for oneself. He gave this process a name: individuation. He didn't just give it a name. He drew a map of this dark forest and showed that a treasure awaits on the other side. And it is in this map, in the laws of the process of individuation, that the key to understanding your loneliness, to its true purpose and meaning, lies. In the next part, we will unroll this ancient scroll and begin to read it together. So we have come to Jung's central idea, individuation. To understand its essence, we must forget about modern psychology with its lists and diagnoses, and turn to a language that was much closer to Jung himself, the language of the ancient alchemists. To begin with, individuation is not what we today call self-development. It is not about pumping up your willpower, optimizing your productivity, or creating a better version of yourself. It is also not selfish individualism that says, I will do what I want and I don't care about anyone else. Individuation is something much deeper, more dangerous, and more sacred. The ancient alchemists in their secret laboratories sought to perform the great work, to transform base, heavy lead into pure, radiant gold. Jung saw in this process a perfect metaphor for a person's psychological journey. Lead is our initial, raw personality. It is a mixture of parental conditioning, social masks, cultural prejudices, and unconscious instincts. It is who we think we are. Gold is our self, our true, unique, and whole being. It is who we are called to become. But the alchemists knew, for the transformation to occur, one key condition was necessary. The entire process had to take place in a hermetically sealed vessel, which they called the vas bene clausum. Inside this vessel, the initial substance had to be subjected to immense pressure and heat, break down into its primary elements, pass through blackening and purification, and then reunite in a new higher quality. If the vessel was not sealed, if outside air penetrated it or steam escaped from it, the great work was doomed to fail. Your loneliness is this alchemical vessel, the external world with its endless noise, other people's opinions, advice and projections. This is the very outside air that interferes with the delicate internal process. The pressure and heat necessary for your transformation are simply dissipated in social interactions. Therefore, your psyche, your wise, unconscious part, takes a radical step. It seals the vessel itself. It creates conditions of isolation so that the necessary chemical reactions can occur within you. It separates you from others so that you can finally separate yourself from others' ideas about you, which you have mistaken for your own. Your life is not a problem to be solved. It is an alchemical vessel in which the lead of suffering must be transformed into the gold of meaning. This process may sound abstract. Let's translate it from the language of symbols into the language of human life. Let me tell you the story of Sarah. All her life until she was 35, Sarah was a work of art created by others. Her personality was a flawless tapestry woven from others' threads. To her parents, she was the good daughter, the one who chose the right profession and never caused trouble. To her company, she was the reliable employee, the one who always stayed late and took on others' responsibilities, silently swallowing her fatigue. To her friends, she was the convenient friend, the one who would always listen but would never burden them with her own problems. She was a perfect mirror, reflecting the expectations of everyone who looked into it. And she was so busy polishing this mirror that she forgot who was behind it. And then, over the course of one rainy autumn month, her world collapsed. First came a layoff at work. Her reliability turned out to be just an expense line item. 2 weeks later, her partner, for whom she had tried so hard to be perfect, said he needed to find himself, and left. The alchemical vessel was sealed. Sarah was left alone in an empty, echoing apartment where every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of a floorboard, only emphasized the deafening silence. The first few weeks were hell. She would wake up, stare at the ceiling, and couldn't find a single reason to get up. Who was she now? Without the role of an employee, without the role of a partner, without the applause and nods of approval, her personality seemed to have dissolved. She was a ghost in her own home, mechanically consuming tasteless food and staring for hours at a dark phone screen. And then one day, on one of those gray, formless days, out of complete despair and boredom, her gaze fell on an old dusty case in the corner of the closet. Inside was a guitar. Her first cheap guitar, bought with saved money when she was 16. The guitar she had abandoned 15 years ago because her father said it was time to get serious. She took it out. The strings were old, the fretboard covered in a layer of dust. She sat on the floor, pressed the cold wood against her, and touched the strings. The sound was terrible, clumsy, buzzing, out of tune. But in that moment, a miracle happened. She was playing, and for the first time in years, there was no one in the room to impress. There were no listeners, no critics, no expectations. There was only this imperfect sound and the vibration coming from the body right into her chest. She played simple, forgotten chords, over and over. And in that buzzing of old strings, she didn't hear music. She heard the sound of coming home, to herself. It was her own, undistorted, unapproved voice. The voice of the 16-year-old girl she had betrayed for the sake of a serious life. The guitar didn't get her job back or make the phone ring, but it did something more. It gave Sarah back. Sarah. This useless act became the first brick in the foundation of her new, authentic self. And this is why I told you this story. This story is not about a guitar, and perhaps it's not even about Sarah. This story is about the voice inside you that you forced into silence, about that unique, living, beating heart of yourself that you may have betrayed for the sake of seriousness, correctness, approval from the world. Your loneliness is not just the absence of external noise. It is a deafening silence created by your own psyche for one single, vital purpose: for you to finally hear this voice. The voice you have ignored for years, for decades. The voice that whispered to you about your true desires, about your unique nature. about your own unparalleled path. The pain you feel now is not just the pain of the absence of others. It is the cry of the part of you that you have betrayed. It is your soul's grief for the life you never allowed yourself to live, for the talents you didn't develop because it's not practical, for the dreams you buried because it's not serious, for the feelings you suppressed because it's not proper. It is this cry, this pain, this silence. This is your inner alchemical vessel. This is the Vasben Clausum in which your individuation is taking place. And your task now is not to seek people to drown out this silence. Your task is not to run from this pain. Your task is to find your guitar. What is your guitar for you? It could be a forgotten hobby that seemed childish to you. It could be a passion for writing that you suppressed by choosing a stable career. It could be a pull towards travel, nature, art, which you postponed for later. It could even be a particular way of thinking that always seemed strange or wrong to you. Your guitar is any part of you that you have put away in a dusty corner of your soul because the world told you it was useless or not serious. But it is precisely in this uselessness, in this lack of seriousness, that your authentic, undistorted power is hidden. That is where the key to your true self lies. Let this loneliness be your guide. Let it be the one that makes you listen. Because only in this silence can you hear your own undistorted voice. And only by hearing it can you begin to move forward truly from the heart and not by someone else's command. And here is my second question for you, perhaps the most important one in this entire video. If your task is to find your guitar, then let's take the first most important step towards its return. Right now, I want you to look deep inside yourself, into the furthest, dustiest archives of your memory, and answer the question, what guitar did you abandon? What did you truly, with a passion that made your fingertips tremble, love to do before the world in the form of parents, teachers, society, told you it was wrong, useless, not serious, or you can't make a living from that? Maybe it was a sketchbook you hid under your bed, full of imaginary worlds. Maybe it was poems you wrote in a secret notebook, words that seemed more real to you than the world around you. Maybe it was a passion for dance, when you would lock yourself in your room and let the music control your body, feeling completely free. Or maybe it was something else, a love for long, aimless walks in the woods when you talk to the trees, a fascination with constructing, building models, creating something from nothing. Maybe you loved taking apart old clocks to understand how the world worked, or you sang when you thought no one could hear you, and your voice seemed the strongest and most real. We have all left something behind. We have all sacrificed some important part of our soul on the altar of adult life. And here is my request. I want you to share this in the comments below, but not to show off or get likes. No, the purpose of this ritual is completely different. By writing it down, you are performing a powerful symbolic act. You are facing your past and telling the universe, and most importantly, yourself, I remember. This was important. This is still important. You are taking your treasure out of the dusty chest and bringing it into the light. You are restoring its value. Let's make this comments section not just a list of messages. Let's turn it into a sacred archive of our true selves, into an incredible exhibition of our forgotten treasures. And when you've written your comment, do the second part of the ritual. Read what others have written. Read about others' abandoned violins, unfinished novels, unbuilt model ships, and unexplored forest trails. And you will feel something amazing. You will see that you are not alone in this betrayal of yourself. You will see that this is a common, deep human tragedy. And in this shared acknowledgement lies immense healing. So do it. Write it in the comments. Let the digital letters become the first spell that brings your magic back into the world. After you have looked into your past and perhaps shared your forgotten guitar in the comments, we are ready to take the next step. We are moving from understanding to transformation. And the first, most fundamental step on this path is to completely change your very attitude towards the problem. So we have established loneliness is not an enemy to be defeated. It is your strictest, but also your most honest teacher. It has no favorites. It accepts no excuses. Its only textbook is your own life. and its only method is ruthless truth. This teacher rips off all your comfortable masks one by one. It takes away all the roles you hid behind. It deprives you of the external mirrors in which you were used to seeing your reflection. It locks you in a room with the one person you may have been running from your whole life yourself, and it will not let you out until you truly get to know each other. In ancient alchemy, this stage was called nigredo, the blackening. It is the stage where the initial substance, the lead of our personality, placed in the hermetic vessel, begins to break down, to rot, to turn into a uniform black mass. It is a stage of chaos, despair, and disorientation. A stage where it seems that all is lost, that the light will never return. It is the dissolution of the old form, the death of the old king, our habitual ego, which ruled our life. Yes, it is painful. Yes, it is scary. It is like a descent into the underworld. But here is the great paradox that the alchemists knew, and that Jung rediscovered for us. Without this radical dissolution, without this encounter with absolute darkness, transformation is impossible. You cannot build a new sturdy house on an old rotten foundation. First, it must be destroyed to its very base. Your pain is not a signal of a breakdown. It is the heat of the furnace in which the great transformation is taking place. Without this stage of dissolution, it is impossible to create the philosopher's stone, your whole, authentic, indestructible self, your selfhood. Therefore, when you feel that you are falling apart, know this: it is not the end. It is the beginning of the great work. The alchemy of your soul has already begun. If loneliness is the teacher, and its main lesson is the encounter with oneself, then which part of ourselves do we meet in this empty, echoing classroom? Jung gave this phenomenon a precise and frightening name. It is our shadow. Therefore, the way forward is not a desperate search for people to fill the void. It is a courageous, decisive dive inward, into the darkest waters of your soul. Imagine that your whole life you have been carrying an invisible backpack. From childhood, you were taught to put everything unacceptable into it. Your anger when you were told that good children don't get angry. Your healthy aggression when you were taught to be convenient. Your envy, your fears, your sexuality, your laziness, your weakness. Everything you were shamed for. Everything you decided not to be. This heavy, dark, overstuffed backpack is your shadow. And here's the trick. As long as we are surrounded by people, as long as we are immersed in the social hustle, we have a wonderful way of not noticing the weight of this backpack. We project its contents onto others. We see our own suppressed greed in our boss. We despise the laziness in our partner, not noticing our own. We are indignant at someone else's anger because we do not allow ourselves our own. Projection is a brilliant defense mechanism. It allows us to hate our bad qualities in others while maintaining the illusion of our own impeccability. But what happens when you are left alone? The projector turns off, the screen goes dark, and all these projected images, all these demons you saw outside, slowly turn around and come home. To you. They sit across from you at the kitchen table in the deafening silence. And this is why loneliness is so unbearable. It is not the absence of others. It is the agonizing presence of the parts of yourself that you have rejected. And your task, your only path to healing and strength, is not to try to kill these demons. That is a civil war you cannot win. Your task is to integrate them, to look them in the eye, to acknowledge their right to exist, to ask what message they carry. And here is the great paradox of the shadow, its hidden treasure. It is precisely in this dark backpack, in what you most despise and fear in yourself, that your most powerful, most vital energy is hidden. In your suppressed anger lies the strength to finally learn to say no and defend your boundaries. In your rejected weakness lies the capacity for empathy and true intimacy. In your laziness lies the wisdom of your body, begging you for rest. By integrating the shadow, you do not become bad. You become whole. You reclaim the energy you were spending on suppression. You cannot move forward until you shake hands with the part of yourself you have been running from your whole life. It's easy to talk about integrating the shadow, but what does it look like in practice, in the silence of your room, when theory seems distant and the pain is very real? Let me offer you two powerful concrete exercises you can start doing today. These are not quick fixes, but the beginning of deep and meaningful work. The first exercise, dialogue with the shadow. This is a cornerstone of Jungian practice. Take a journal and a pen. Your journal is not just paper. It is a negotiating table between your conscious ego and your unconscious shadow. Choose one feeling that torments you most in your loneliness. It could be a sticky fear, a burning shame, an irrational anger, or a paralyzing apathy. Now personify this feeling. Imagine it as a separate being, sitting across from you. Give it a name if you like, and begin a dialogue. Write a direct address to it. For example, "Hello, my fear," and then ask it a few simple but profound questions. What do you want to tell me? What important message are you carrying that I refuse to hear? What danger are you trying to protect me from? And then, the most important part, be silent and listen, and write down the answer that comes to your mind. Don't edit, don't censor. Even if the answer seems like nonsense, absurd, or something shameful, just write. This is the beginning of integration. You stop fighting the shadow and start talking to it. You acknowledge its right to exist and try to understand its good intentions, however distorted they may seem. The second exercise, the self-date ritual. If the dialogue with the shadow is internal diplomacy, then this exercise is an act of reclaiming your own value and sovereignty. Once a week, without fail, schedule a date with yourself, and it must be a real quality date. Go to that beautiful restaurant you've been saving for a special occasion. Buy a single ticket in the front row for a movie you've long wanted to see. Go alone to a beautiful park or an exhibition. And here's the key rule. The purpose of this ritual is not to not feel lonely. On the contrary, the purpose is to consciously and with pleasure spend time in the company of the most important, most interesting, and most valuable person in your life, yourself. This is an act that reprograms your unconscious. It tells your soul without words, you are worthy of the best. Your company is a privilege, not a punishment. I choose you. From a Jungian perspective, this strengthens your connection, not with the ego, but with yourself, with your true center. You learn to be a source of joy for yourself, rather than waiting for it from others. These exercises are not just techniques, they are acts of self-respect. They are the first tentative steps toward reclaiming your own worth. And when you start practicing them, when you sit down at the negotiating table with your shadow, or take yourself on a date like the most cherished guests, the very phrase, "force yourself to move forward alone," takes on a completely new, profound meaning. We are used to hearing in this a call to self-violence, the voice of an inner tyrant screaming, "Get it together, you weakling! Work harder! Stop whining!" This is the voice of toxic productivity, which sees a person only as a resource to be squeezed dry. But from the perspective we have opened up today, this is not an act of violence. It is an act of the highest, most courageous love for oneself. To force yourself to move forward in this new context is not to whip yourself. It is to take sacred responsibility for your soul. It is a sacred promise that your present, confused I makes to your future, whole I. It is an oath that sounds like this: I value you and our shared journey so much that I will walk through this fire alone to one day meet you. I will endure this silence. I will bear this pain. I will not betray you by escaping into superficial connections or easy distractions. I will stay here in this alchemical vessel for as long as it takes, because you, my future I, are worth it. So hear me now. You are not weak for being here. You are not broken. You are at the very epicenter of your personal growth crisis. The pain you feel is not the death agony of an old personality. It is the cracking of the shell from which something new, strong, and real is emerging. The power you so desperately sought outside in others' approval, in signs and motivational speeches, is just a pale echo of the titanic force that has been waiting for your acknowledgement within all this time. It was waiting for you to stop looking for it outside and finally turn to face it. And that moment has come. You are not just surviving. You are on the threshold of your greatest strength. We have come a long way in this hour. From a labyrinth of pain and misunderstanding to a map of the soul left to us by great sages. And if we were to boil down our entire long journey to a single, sharp idea for you to carry in your heart, it would be this. The loneliness you feared so much, which seemed like a curse, is not a wall between you and the world. It is a bridge. It is a bridge leading from the noisy, bustling shore of others' expectations to the quiet, solid shore of your own, authentic essence. It is a transition from who you were taught to be, to survive in society, to who you truly are, by your birthright, from your artfully crafted persona to your eternal, radiant self. And yes, walking this bridge is scary. It has no railings of others' advice and approving nods. It is often shrouded in a thick fog of doubt, and beneath it lies an abyss of frightening uncertainty. Every step on it is an act of faith in yourself, when perhaps no one else believes in you. But here is the truth for which this journey is worth taking. Only by crossing this bridge to the end do you gain something you never had before, an unbreakable inner foundation. You shift your center of gravity from the fragile, changing world of external evaluations to the indestructible, eternal center of your own soul. You gain a foundation that no one can ever take away from you. No crisis, no breakup, no layoff will ever be able to pull the ground out from under your feet again. And one day, standing on the other side, you will turn around and realize with surprise that all this time you were not building a wall that isolated you, but an indestructible foundation for your inner temple. This inner foundation is not just a beautiful idea, it changes everything. Allow yourself for a moment to see what it will open up for you. Imagine yourself in a year, or in 2. Imagine a person who has walked across this bridge. Imagine a person who is no longer afraid of silence, because it is in silence that they learn to hear the voice of their deepest wisdom. For them, solitude has become not a punishment, but a luxury, a time to recharge, to create, to connect with themselves. Imagine a person who values deep, sincere relationships, but no longer depends on them like air. They enter into them not out of need, not out of fear of being alone, but out of fullness and a desire to share their inner wealth. They no longer seek in others what they have already found in themselves. They stop looking for a harbor in other people because they themselves have become the ship, the ocean, and the lighthouse. Imagine a person whose center of gravity, whose sense of self-worth is not in the fickle world of likes, salaries, and others' opinions, but deep within, in the unshakable core of their self. They can be criticized, they can be misunderstood, they can even be rejected, but they can no longer be broken, because they know who they are without any external validation. This person is not a fictional character from a book. This is you, having walked your path to the end. This is the promise hidden in your current crisis. This is your birthright. And before we finish, I want to tell you something personally. Thank you. Thank you for your trust. And thank you for your immense courage to look into the deepest and at times the darkest corners of your soul with me today. It is this courage, this readiness for an honest look inward, that unites everyone who finds their way to this space. And here is the final, beautiful paradox of our journey today. You came here because you felt completely alone, isolated on your own planet. But in this very search, in this courageous dive into the meaning of your loneliness, you have found an invisible tribe of fellow travelers. Every comment under this video, every story of a forgotten guitar, is a light in the night that says to other travelers, you are not alone. You thought your path was one of separation, but by walking it consciously, you have found your community. You have found your people. Welcome home. Your journey is just beginning. And if you want us to walk part of this path together, if this exploration has resonated in your soul, then I invite you to subscribe. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's your yes to continuing this important conversation with yourself. Our channel isn't just videos. It's an expedition inward to the most important and sacred truths about who we are. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next step on this map, the next key to understanding yourself. And finally, if you know someone who is walking through their own dark forest alone right now, who is struggling with the silence and sees no way out, perhaps this video will be a light for them, a map, a voice that says, you are not alone and your path has meaning. Share it. Sometimes one act of kindness can change everything. Thank you for being here. And remember, when you feel lost, when all external roads lead to a dead end, the truest path is the path inward.